something
Okay,
to explore.
so we're diving into another parenting topic today. It's all about those epic meltdowns the kids have, those tough days.
Yeah.
We've all been there, right?
Yeah.
It's how do we deal with these? And, how do we actually use these moments to help our kids build resilience? So we're taking a deep dive into a podcast episode all about this.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think makes this so tricky is that kids aren't always the best at telling us what's going on.
Right. What is going on in your little head?
Right, they don't have the words sometimes to express what's going on with them.
It's true. It's true. They speak another language sometimes.
They do, but we can learn to decode it. And one of the things that this podcast talked about was kind of some of the common signs of a kid that's struggling. So obvious things like slamming doors or, refusing to talk, the silent treatment, or even bursting into tears over what seemed like to us really small things. But, to them, it's a huge deal. And also, I think changes in appetite or sleep patterns, these can all be kind of red flags that something's not quite right.
Okay, so we're recognizing the signs, right?
Yeah.
What's the next step?
Yeah.
What do we do? So this podcast talked about creating this safe emotional space, and I thought that was just so insightful.
Yeah, it's really crucial, I think. I mean, think about if you come home after a horrible day at work.
Oh yeah.
And you just get bombarded with questions, you're not ready for that. You need a minute to decompress.
Totally.
Kids are the same way.
Right, yeah.
And so it's not about dismissing their feelings. It's not about rushing in to fix everything. It's about giving them the space and the support to kind of process those emotions before they're ready to even talk about it.
Right.
And this podcast had some really great practical tips, I think, for creating that safe space. Simple things like greeting them warmly when they get home. Resisting the urge to grill them. How was your day? What happened?
Don't be a question monster.
Right, exactly. And then also, I thought was interesting was the power of nonverbal comfort. So, like a hug, a gentle touch, or even just sitting quietly near them. Those can all be really powerful ways to kind of communicate that support without, overwhelming them with words.
Right. But one thing I thought was so interesting was how much our own energy kind of plays into this.
Right, yeah.
They pick up on that, right?
They absolutely pick up on that. It's called co-regulation, and it's extremely powerful. If we can stay calm and grounded when our kid is having a meltdown, it can actually help them regulate their own emotion.
Oh, wow. That's powerful.
Yeah, we want to be the calm in their storm.
Yes.
But once we've created that safe space, I think then this podcast talked a lot about the importance of active listening. And I think this is something that, we all think we're good listeners, but there's a difference between hearing the words and really tuning in.
Oh, a huge difference, yeah.
A huge difference. Active listening is about being fully present. Putting away distractions and really making your child feel heard and understood. And there are certain techniques that can really help us do that better. So things like, using open-ended questions. Instead of the yes or no, so instead of saying, did you have a good day? It's tell me about your day.
Right.
Validating their feelings, even if you don't agree with them, so if your kid is upset because, they didn't get the toy they wanted, it's not helpful to say, well, that's silly. You have plenty of toys. It's about validating that feeling of disappointment. I see that you're really disappointed that you didn't get that toy.
Right.
And then they mentioned this thing, mirroring emotions, that I was so curious about.
Yes, I want to dig into this one.
Me too. So mirroring emotions is basically reflecting back what your child is feeling, not just in words, but in your tone and even your body language. So if your child is expressing sadness, you might say something like, I can see that you're feeling really sad about what happened. It's not about mimicking exactly their emotions, but it's about letting them know that you see them, you acknowledge what they're experiencing.
Right, and that's what makes them feel like their feelings are valid.
Exactly. And then on the flip side, the podcast also talked about some common listening mistakes that we make.
Oh, I'm sure I've made all of these.
Oh, yeah, we all do. And these mistakes can actually do more harm than good.
Okay, so like what?
So things like, dismissing their feelings, jumping in with solutions too quickly, or comparing their experience to something you went through.
Oh, yeah. Why is that so detrimental, though? It seems like we're trying to relate or help in some way.
Right. And that's the intention often, but When we dismiss a child's feelings, even if it's unintentionally, like we're just trying to kind of brush it off and say, "Oh, you'll be fine," it it sends the message that those feelings aren't valid or important. And then when we jump to solutions too quickly, we're often missing the opportunity to really hear and understand what they're going through. And with the comparison thing, it's natural to want to relate, to say, "Oh, I remember when I was a kid and this happened to me." But the thing is, that can sometimes minimize their experience.
Right.
So it's really about being present with them in that moment of emotional discomfort and not trying to rush them through it.
Yeah.
And then once you've really listened, you've validated their experience, the podcast has some amazing tips for actually helping your child reset after a tough day.
Okay, yes. This is the good stuff.
Yeah.
Like practical, actionable advice.
Totally. Totally. And some of it is so simple, but we forget about it in the heat of the moment.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, what was the first one they talked about?
Encouraging movement.
Oh, yeah.
So simple, but it's amazing how powerful movement can be for shifting our emotional state. When a child is having a meltdown, it's almost like their little bodies are just overflowing with these big emotions they don't know how to process.
Right.
So we need to give those feelings a physical outlet. It's not about tiring them out necessarily, although that can be a side benefit,
Right.
but it's about tapping into that mind-body connection.
Okay, so we're talking like going for a walk, having a dance party, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Exactly. Anything to get them moving, and with younger kids, you can make it playful, put on some music, have a silly dance off, create an obstacle course in the living room, just get their bodies moving and their energy flowing in a different direction.
I love that. Make it
Mhm.
fun. Yeah. What were some of the other reset strategies that they recommended?
Creative expression was another big one. Giving kids a chance to express themselves through art, whether it's drawing, painting, writing, even playing with clay.
Right, right. It's like giving them a language beyond words to kind of get those feelings out.
Exactly, exactly. And it doesn't have to be, a masterpiece.
Right.
It's more about the process of creating and releasing those emotions.
Oh,
And then they also talked about the power of storytelling and reading.
oh yeah.
So, sometimes a little escape is just what we all need. And reading a book together, telling stories, even watching a movie can provide comfort. It can spark imagination. It can help them see things from different perspectives.
It's the power of escapism. Big believer in that.
Me too. And then there's the power of mindful breathing and relaxation techniques.
Yes.
So simple things like taking a few deep breaths, doing some simple stretches, or even just lying down and listening to some calming music.
This is something I'm trying to do more of myself.
Right. It's so good for us. It helps calm the nervous system.
Yeah.
It regulates emotions. It just brings a sense of peace. And, the podcast suggested this simple breathing exercise. Just breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4, and breathe out for 4.
Okay. Yeah.
You can even make it into a game with younger kids. Make it fun.
I love that. I love that. Okay. Anything else?
Oh, yeah. They talked about the power of music and sensory soothing. So things like playing calming music, dimming the lights, giving them a warm bath, or even just letting them snuggle up with a favorite blanket or stuffed animal.
It's like creating that little haven for them, that safe space.
Right, exactly. And then, of course, we can't forget about laughter.
Yes.
Sometimes a funny video, a silly joke, or a playful game can completely shift a child's mood.
It's true. It's true. Laughter is the best medicine sometimes.
It really is. But here's the thing I think is so important, and the podcast really emphasized this: choice.
Okay.
It's so crucial to give our kids options and let them lead in deciding what feels best for them in that moment. We might think we know what they need, but they're the experts on their own internal experience.
Right. So like instead of saying go take a bath,
Yeah.
it's would you like to take a bath or read a book or whatever it is.
Exactly. Exactly. It's about empowering them to take charge of their own well-being.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
I love it. And that brings us to kind of a bigger point here, right? Like all of these strategies that we're talking about, these aren't just quick fixes. These are building blocks for something much bigger.
Absolutely. We're helping our kids develop long-term resilience.
Okay, yes. The ability to bounce back from challenges.
Exactly. To navigate difficult situations, to thrive even when things get tough.
And to kind of come out stronger on the other side.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do we actually teach our kids to be more resilient? Like what are the things that we can do?
So the podcast talked about a few different things, like teaching gratitude.
Oh yeah.
It's easy to focus on the negative.
especially when you're feeling stressed or down.
Right, right. But even on bad days, there are always things to be grateful for. And so
Well,
the podcast suggested, maybe making it a nightly ritual to share something you're grateful for.
oh, I love that. Such a
Oh,
simple little thing. Yeah, yeah,
that's so powerful, right?
yeah. What about like reframing negative thoughts? How do we help our kids do that?
So it's about teaching them to see challenges as opportunities for growth and learning.
Yeah.
Instead of dwelling on what went wrong, encourage them to ask questions like, what can I learn from this? Or how can I do things differently next time?
It's like a mindset shift.
Yeah,
Instead of seeing failures as like the end of the world, it's like, okay, this is a stepping stone.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And honestly, one of the most powerful ways we can teach resilience is by modeling it ourselves.
Oh, huge, huge, huge. Actions speak lighter than words.
They really do. If our kids see us handling stress in a healthy way, whether it's taking a few deep breaths, going for a run, journaling our thoughts, whatever works for us, they're more likely to adopt those strategies themselves.
It's like we have to be the change we want to see in our kids.
Exactly. We're not just telling them what to do, we're showing them how to live a resilient life.
Powerful stuff. Okay, so before we move on to part two of this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a little bit of a thought-provoking question.
I love it. Hit me.
So we've been talking about all these amazing strategies for helping kids navigate tough emotions, but I can't help but wonder, how many of these strategies could we as adults benefit from applying in our own lives?
That's a great question.
Something to ponder as we head into part two.
Yeah, that's a really good point, We often hold ourselves to these impossible standards, but we'd never expect our kids to be perfect all the time.
Right.
And so we need to give ourselves that same grace and compassion that we so freely give to our kids.
It's, it's
Yeah.
so true. It's so true. Okay, so as we dive back into this parenting podcast, let's keep that in mind. A lot of these strategies are just as helpful for us as they are for our little ones. Speaking of helpful strategies, the podcast also talked about the power of routines, especially bedtime routines.
Well, routines are like magic,
Yes,
especially for kids who, thrive on predictability and structure.
it's that sense of safety and security,
Yeah.
knowing what to expect.
Exactly. And when it comes to bedtime, a calming routine can really signal to their bodies and minds that it's time to wind down, and prepare for sleep, which can be huge, especially after a day filled with emotional ups and downs.
Right, right. So what kind of things can we incorporate into a bedtime routine to kind of help with that reset?
Well, the podcast had some great suggestions, and a lot of them are things that we already know,
Yeah.
but we don't always prioritize. So, for example, a warm bath is a classic for a reason,
Yeah.
It's soothing, it's relaxing, it helps wash away the day's stress, literally and figuratively.
It's like hitting the reset button on a little nervous system.
Totally. Reading a book together is another one, another fantastic way to kind of to connect and create a sense of calm before bed.
Yeah.
I think we can all relate to how soothing it is to just get lost in a good book.
Yeah. I love that time. Like, it's such a special time to bond and just kind of escape together.
Yeah, it is. It is. And let's not underestimate the power of simply talking and cuddling.
Yes. Yeah.
Sometimes just that physical closeness and a chance to kind of chat about their day or just be close can make all the difference in the world. It helps them process their emotions and feel loved and supported. And then as they're drifting off to sleep, you can sprinkle in a little positive affirmation.
Oh, I love that. Like reminding them how much you love them
Mm.
or how proud you are of them.
Exactly. Those positive messages can really sink in when they're falling asleep, and it can boost their self-esteem, and it fosters a sense of security. And then if they're really struggling to settle down, you can try white noise or calming nature sounds.
I use white noise myself
Yeah.
sometimes. It's amazing.
It's like creating a little cocoon of peace.
It is. It is. Yeah.
It helps block out distractions and creates a more peaceful sleep environment.
Right. The key is to just find what works for your child and kind of create that consistent routine that signals, okay, it's time to relax and recharge.
Right.
And speaking of recharging, the podcast also talked about the importance of nutrition,
Yeah.
which, makes sense, but it's something we don't always think about when we're, so focused on the behavior.
It's easy to forget that what we feed our kids can have a huge impact on their mood and their behavior.
Oh, absolutely.
We all know that sugary treats can lead to sugar highs and crashes, but it's bigger than that. It's about providing them with nourishing foods that actually fuel their bodies and their brains.
Right.
So, think whole grains, fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, the good stuff.
The good stuff, yeah. And hydration too, right?
Well,
So important.
oh, absolutely. Dehydration can contribute to fatigue, headaches, even mood swings.
Right.
So make sure they're drinking plenty of water throughout the day, especially after physical activity.
Yes, yes. Good reminder, good
Yeah.
reminder. As we're talking about all of this, I keep thinking back to that idea of giving ourselves grace as parents.
Mm-hmm.
And the podcast touched on this too, and it really resonated with me.
It's so important because it's so easy to get caught up in this pressure to be the perfect parent.
Oh, yeah.
And the reality is there's no such thing.
It doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. And striving for perfection is a recipe for burnout and disappointment.
Yes, 100%.
So the podcast really emphasized the importance of letting go of that pressure and focusing on progress, not perfection.
Right.
Celebrating those small wins, being kind to ourselves when we inevitably make mistakes.
Because we all do. We all make mistakes.
We all do. It's part of the learning process, and the best thing we can do for our kids is to model that it's okay to mess up, to learn from our mistakes, and to keep growing.
So it's less about trying to be perfect and more about being authentic.
Exactly. And sometimes being authentic means giving ourselves permission to take a break, to ask for help, or to simply acknowledge that, you know what, I'm doing the best I can with what I have right now.
We don't have to do it all alone.
We really don't.
Mm.
And that brings us to another really crucial point that the podcast highlighted, which is the power of connection.
Oh, I love that. Connection. It's like a superpower.
It really is. It's the antidote to so many challenges, both for kids and adults. And when kids are having a tough time, that sense of connection can be incredibly grounding and reassuring.
Absolutely. So how do we foster that connection, especially when our kids are struggling?
Well, the podcast emphasized the importance of quality time,
Okay.
even if it's just for a few minutes.
Yeah.
Putting away the phones, turning off the TV,
Mhm.
and really just being present with them.
That's hard these days.
It is hard. It is hard.
It is very-
We all struggle with distractions, especially with technology being such a constant presence.
Yeah.
But those small moments of connection can make a world of difference. So, engaging in activities they enjoy, listening attentively to their stories, asking meaningful questions. These are all ways to kind of nurture that connection.
And sometimes it's the simplest things that create the most powerful connections, right?
Absolutely. A shared laugh, a warm hug, a heartfelt conversation. These are the moments that matter.
Yeah. And it's not just about connecting with our kids, it's also about connecting with ourselves.
That's such a good point.
Right.
We can't pour from an empty cup.
Hmm.
So taking time for ourselves,
Yeah.
doing things that bring us joy, nurturing our own well-being. This is crucial.
It's like they say on the airplane. Put on your own oxygen mask first before helping others.
Exactly. And connection is a two-way street. It's about being open and vulnerable with our kids, sharing our own struggles and our triumphs.
Yeah, letting them see our humanness.
Yes. And then another important point that the podcast brought up was the importance of setting realistic expectations.
Ooh, this is huge.
It is.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught up in these idealized visions of what parenthood should be like.
Right.
We set these high bars for ourselves and our kids, and then we end up feeling disappointed and frustrated when things don't go according to plan.
Which is pretty much inevitable.
Which is pretty much inevitable,
Yeah.
right? So the podcast reminded us that every child is different, and their journey is going to be unique.
Right.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach to parenting. We need to let go of those rigid expectations and embrace the beautiful messiness of it all.
I love that.
Right.
It's about celebrating those little victories, focusing on progress, and just accepting that there will be bumps along the way.
Totally. And when those bumps inevitably arise, it's about approaching them with patience, with understanding, and a healthy dose of humor.
Yes.
Life is a roller coaster.
It is.
And parenting is definitely no exception.
Oh, no, for sure.
Yeah.
But remember, you're not alone. We're all in this together.
Yeah.
Navigating the ups and downs, celebrating the joys, and supporting each other along the way. And sometimes that means, knowing when to reach out for professional support.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely. There's absolutely no shame in asking for help. Sometimes we need a little extra guidance and support to navigate the complexities of parenting.
Absolutely. And there are so many amazing resources out there, whether it's a therapist, a counselor, or even just a trusted friend or family member. We don't have to go it alone.
We don't. Now, as we wrap up part 2 of this deep dive, I want to leave you with another thought-provoking question to kind of ponder.
Okay, get me.
Okay, so the podcast focused on helping kids reset after a bad day.
Right.
But I can't help but wonder, how can we apply these strategies in other areas of our lives?
That's such a great question. Yeah, I can already see how some of these ideas could be helpful for our relationships, our work lives, even just our overall approach to handling stress and challenges. Like, it's not just parenting strategies, it's life strategies.
Exactly.
Yeah. But we'll explore that more in part 3. Yeah, it's like we've unlocked this secret code, all these strategies we've been talking about for helping kids, like reset after a tough day. It's not just kid stuff, you know?
Yeah.
It's like fundamental principles of emotional well-being that we can all benefit from, no matter what challenges life throws our way.
It's fascinating, right? It's like the same tools that help a 5-year-old, navigate a temper tantrum can also help a CEO handle like a board meeting gone wrong.
Right, exactly.
We're all just humans trying to figure out how to manage these big messy emotions.
Right, exactly. And that brings me to something that wasn't explicitly addressed in this podcast, but it's been kind of swirling in my mind this whole time.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's got you thinking?
Technology. We're living in this digital world, and it's impacting our kids in ways that we're only just beginning to understand.
Great.
And I can't help but wonder, like, how does technology play into this whole emotional well-being equation?
It's the elephant in the room,
Yeah.
right? I mean, technology can be an incredible tool for learning, for connection, even for stress relief. But it can also be a major source of anxiety, distraction, and social pressure. It's all about finding that balance, I think.
Right. And teaching our kids to use technology in a mindful and healthy way,
Right.
which is easier said than done.
Mm,
It feels like a constant battle sometimes.
it can be, but I think the key is to start early and to lead by example. So, setting clear limits on screen time, encouraging outdoor play, and just modeling healthy tech habits ourselves. These are all important steps, but we also need to be having open and honest conversations with their kids about the potential downsides of technology.
Right. Like cyberbullying, online safety, and the pressure to present this like perfect image on social media. These are all real issues that our kids are dealing with.
Absolutely, absolutely. And these conversations need to be ongoing, right? Because technology is constantly evolving. We need to stay informed and adapt our approach as needed.
It's like we're all figuring this out together, right? Parents and kids alike.
We are. And that's why I think it's so important to remember that we don't have all the answers. We're going to make mistakes. Our kids are going to make mistakes, and that's okay.
It's all part of the learning process.
Yeah.
Which brings us back to that powerful idea we talked about earlier, modeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, our kids learn so much by watching us. They're little sponges soaking up everything we do and say.
They are. They are. And I think that can feel like a lot of pressure sometimes,
Right.
but it's also an incredible gift. We have the power to show our kids what it means to be resilient, to be kind, to face challenges with courage and grace.
And to make mistakes, own up to them,
Yeah,
and keep growing.
exactly. We're all works in progress.
And that's a beautiful thing.
It is. It is.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the message I'm taking away is this: like, parenting is a journey, not a destination. It's messy, it's challenging, it's constantly evolving, but it's also incredibly rewarding. And we don't have to do it alone.
Beautifully said. There's a whole community of parents out there navigating these same challenges, celebrating the same joys, and supporting each other along the way. And remember, even on the toughest days, you are doing a great job.
And you are loved. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep growing.